Wait a minute, I can get Ravenclaw Dragon Shield sleeves?
I guess if you want them, yeah.
Why has nobody told me this until now?
How have you not known about it until now?
I don't keep up with the times, apparently.
Apparently not.
What's funny is I'm not even that big of a Harry Potter fan, but I do enjoy telling people I'm a Ravenclaw because everyone thinks that I'm a Gryffindor.
That's probably fair.
Because I'm a nice person. But I really like to read books, so...
I roll to you.
Yes. Hey, good morning, you lovely little people. Oh, crap, I can't call you little people. Let's dial that back.
Hometown Commander as a podcast is not against little people or any person of
As a person who's not even 6 foot, I don't think I can say that and not. Anyways, good morning, listeners of this glorious podcast. Welcome to the Test Box. This episode is going to be about one of Millzy's decks that he has in his actual, what we call a test box. Basically, he has 9, I believe, right?
At the moment, it's 9, yeah.
At the moment, 9 decks that he is toying around with, or has been toying around with, for at least, we can say at least 6 months, correct? Like, this one has been around since I first started, and that was back in, like, July, so, yeah.
This deck has been in some sort of state for over a year now, if not more.
Holy nut.
I can't say that all the test box in my box have been there for 6 months, but I would say a lion's share of them have.
There we go. So it is going to be a little bit of Millzy's experience with this deck. This is going to be his deck that he uses currently. He will bring to the table during our play group time and continue to smash us in the face with it, and we will just have to sit there and enjoy it. Or not. I don't know.
Or get smashed by someone playing a precon. Let's go, baby!
You gotta love that red-blue Strixhaven precon. I hate that thing. God, I hate that thing. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Before we dive straight into it, obviously you know that we are trying to get out as much energy as we possibly can, and the one energy that we actually enjoy drinking is Rogue Energy. Shameless plug.
Only shameless plugs at Hometown Commander.
Only shameless plugs at Hometown. Hometown Commander is a podcast that loves doing shameless plugs.
But only shameless plugs for things we actually use.
And
we do use Rogue Energy.
Let's give him a little bit of that shake.
I hope this comes across good on the mic, like truly candidly, because if not, this is going to be terrible for the listener.
Oh no, I can imagine like it just sounds like complete like 1980s like, and it's just your ears. I'm sure that sound is going to be worse than us shaking the cup.
We hope that you as the listener enjoy that we're trying to make it fun for you, even if it's bad for us.
Oh man, is it bad for us? No, but you can use the code HOMETOWN at checkout when you go to rogueenergy.com to get all your energy needs. I'm talking flavors like cookies and cream. We're going to be trying that pretty soon. We are also enjoying, I had grape popsicle at one point. That was really, really good.
You know where they can go if they want to find out how we enjoyed cookies and cream.
How?
The Discord.
Oh my goodness, we have a Discord.
Yeah, the link's down below. Join our Discord. Come chat with us. Lovable scrubby bubbles about all of our magic related things. It is free to anyone who wants to listen to our podcast. We do not lock our Discord behind a paywall. You are more than welcome to come join us. We will spend all of the time that we spend way too much time on a Magic Gathering talking to you if that's what you want to do.
My hope is to spend as much time on the Discord as I do on EDH Rec, which is...
Oh, that's impossible. That's impossible. Like, no.
Let's count. 1, 2 tabs open on the computer as of right now, and I'm pretty sure I have...
I've got 6 on the computer.
I got 3 more on my phone, so I'm up to 5. I'm sure...
Guys, we brew the decks.
We brew the decks.
But...
that's where we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about a deck that Millzy has brewed and has had a loving experience with. Who exactly are we going to be talking about today?
Today, we are talking about Kykar, a.k.a. Kykar Wind's Fury. He is a legendary bird wizard for 1 in Jeskai, so blue, white, red.
Yeah.
He has flying, which is always great.
Kykar!
Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying, and then the creme de la creme.
Oh, gimme.
Sacrifice a spirit, add a red mana. So not only are we just making tokens, Mikey, we're getting the red mana.
Chef's kiss.
So Kykar is a commander that I've had built for I want to say almost 2 years. Probably, I've been tinkering around with him since it came out in M20. It's one of the non-green commanders that I think I love the most. We create tokens. We get to play spells and get a payback for those spells. We can play the token aggressive route if we want to. We can do the Artificer Enchantress route and just dump a bunch of enchantments down, which is what most of the time it's done anyway. We get to play a few Planeswalkers. We get to get some value from Planeswalkers.
Who doesn't love Planeswalkers?
Happy to say that every card type in Magic is represented in this deck. And
even a land?
Even a land. I mean, how crazy is it that you'd expect that lands would be in a commander
Wait
deck?
a minute, is a basic land actually in this deck?
Yep.
Look at that.
8 of them.
I love it. I love it so much.
But, so my hope for this series, if this ever takes off, if you guys like this, if you like it, please come into the Discord and at me and let me know.
Yes.
Is to take you through some of the decks in my test box, tell you my experience with it, why I built the deck, what I like about the deck, what's changed, and then hopefully you will carbon copy my deck and take it to your playground. No, just kidding. No, hopefully if Kykar is a commander you're interested in, maybe you can take some notes. Maybe you have a Kykar deck and you can take some notes from mine. And
get ready to lose.
Hopefully we have some fun.
Because you will do that a lot with this deck. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. My experience with Kykar is it was the first deck you handed me. It was a color combination I knew when we first started playing together.
You said you liked blue and you said you liked red. I figured, hey, Kykar will do it.
Kykar will do it. I played it, and what was so funny is I played it, I think, it was the only deck I wanted to play when we got together until I got my own deck and started building and brewing and so on now. And now I'm insane. But it was funny because I remember I was playing it one time and we finished playing. I don't even think I won the game, but you were just so thrown back by the game that you were like, I'm so excited to see the deck work. I'm so excited, or I'm so not excited to see the deck work in somebody else's hands. And I was just like, okay, I feel good about that. Kykar is a fun commander though. Just to have a bird for 1, I love birds, and to have a flyer who can hit you for 3 is always nice. And then to just go wide with some spirits if you want to, some non-creature spells is always what I'm about, because you know I love them non-creature spells.
Question, Mikey, do you like putting triggers on the stack? Because with Kykar, we're going to put some triggers on the stack, is all I'm saying. Like,
give it to me. Show me, like, what are some things that you have done with this deck to just make it a nice time?
So, originally when I built Kykar, I played it Enchantress. I started actually with primarily enchantments. I read non-creature spell and I said, well, I could go the spell slingy route. You know, a lot of people take Kykar and they go the storm route. I was like, ugh, that's not really my thing. So originally I had a lot more enchantments than you will see in the deck list today. Moxfield links down in the description. Over time, I think a lot of the same cards have stayed, but I've really loved a lot of the spells that I've put into this deck, and I really genuinely enjoy every card in this deck. There's not a card in this deck that I hate or that I don't want any part of. Every card in this deck is in there for a reason, and the most recent iteration of this deck that sits in the sleeves before you, Mikey, is actually a combination of 2 different lists. When we learned on our most recent trip to Innistrad that spirits were going to be getting more support, I wanted to try building Kykar more tribally with more spirits. Try to use some of the spirits that came out, try to use Millicent, and try my best to make a more creature-focused tribal route. And I tried that. And then I took my old list and updated it with some more token producers. The Locust God, Monastery Mentor, and Locust God were the main 2 that I added because they're both very good at what they do. So that version of the deck had a lot more, Young Pyromancer, these cards that are creating tokens. I got probably 3 or 4 games in with each of them, and I have to say that as much as I loved the new tribal spirit support, I really missed the slingy value that I got out of the original list. So what I decided to do was take some of that new spirit support and marry it in with the old list and find a way to create the best of both worlds. So the newest cards, so from Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt, I added Catilda, Dawnheart Mentor. So that is a 1 and 2 white legendary creature. Flying, lifelink, protection from vampires. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits or enchantments. So this is huge because Kykar's making spirits, and I'm playing a lot of enchantments. Looking at the list in front of you, you have 30 enchantments.
If you didn't know, listener, enchantments are non-creature spells, so...
We get a spirit every time, baby.
There you go!
So, Catildas are going to be demonstrably huge to begin with.
Wait, is it each creature or each other creature for her?
Each.
So she even counts.
She counts too. So she has to. Otherwise, she would come in as a 0/0, and that would be bad.
Yeah, that's a good point. Move on.
So when she dies, she's disturbs for 3 and 2 white for Catilda's Rising Dawn in Enchantment Aura, Enchant Creature. Enchanting Creature has flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires, and it has +X/+X, where X is the number of permanents you control that are spirits or enchantments. So this does 2 things. One, it's another creature for us when it's out in the battlefield. It has lifelink, which is great.
Yeah.
Because this deck does have some ways to gain life, but not a ton. And it could get pretty big. This in conjunction with Hallowed Haunting, which is one of the new enchantments that we've got in the deck.
Oh, tell us about Haunting.
From Crimson Vow.
You were so excited for how to have it pass.
When I saw this card, I got a little excited. But mainly, this was like, man, this is Kykar 100%. It says, as long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. Well, most of our creatures have flying anyway, so...
Hang on. Before you go in to say this is Kykar, I'm not going to lie. I already know what you said first before Kykar, and I am going to puke a little bit in my mouth for saying this.
We'll save her for our own episode.
No, but I'm sure that you said Sithis first, but that's
true.
The point.
And then its main ability says, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white spirit creature token with this power. This creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of spirits you control. Mikey, what do we have in the deck that creates spirit tokens?
Oh man, I feel like Kykar?
Yeah, our commander, right? So even when you play this with Kykar up, you get a spirit.
Yep.
And then every other enchantment we play with this down is going to give us, if Kykar's out, 2 spirits. Yeah. One that just comes in as a 1/1, and one that comes in as an XX, where X is the number of spirits we control. That's huge.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'll admit, it's 4 mana. We're playing Jeskai, so it does take us some work to get towards, but I've never, in my time with Kykar, I've never had issue getting to 5 mana. It's getting above 5 mana that's been hit and miss.
You get around that by, I don't know,
sacking spirits for
red mana.
Yeah. So that, and then I am playing Dorothy, a Vengeful Victim. She is one of the new legendary creatures from Crimson Vow for spirits. Flying, whenever an attacker blocks, you sack it at the end of combat. And I know you're already asking yourself, well, that seems kind of bad, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a 4/4 for 2. So, yeah, you get the 1 combat out of it, but you disturb it to its backside. It's 3 mana for an aura, which is an enchantment, and we care about playing enchantments, right?
Yep.
It says, enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, create a 4/4 white spirit creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking.
Man, look at that spirit.
That's tapped and attacking. Not even just get it, tapped and attacking. And it says sack it at the end of combat.
Oh, man.
Now, the nice part is we can sack it with Kykar's ability before the end of combat and get the red mana out of it if we really need to.
Wow, yeah.
Now, we'd lose the mana in between phases, but
if you have an instant...
We had some instant that we wanted to do before the end of combat, we could use it and do it.
Which we're playing non-creature spells, so we should have some kind of instant.
Dorothy and Catilda play both a creature and an enchantment role in our deck. They are creatures when they come down, but they also are enchantments when we disturb them back.
Yep.
And actually, for both of them, the disturb sides are kind of more important than the creature sides.
What's great is they're both spirits.
Uh-huh.
So Kykar still says sacrifice a spirit. It doesn't say spirit token, correct?
It does not. It says spirit.
So if they're getting targeted by a spell, or someone's destroying them, or anything like that, and sack them, still good red mana. Again, if you have an instant that can help you out, hello.
There's other spirit synergy that I get into the deck, and we'll get into that in 1 second. I want to mention one more spirit who's made it into the deck, and that is our Precon commander, Millicent Restless Revenant.
Try saying that.
I originally wasn't going to put Millicent in the deck. The reason that Millicent is in the deck, which I'll explain in a second, but I want to read Millicent first. It is a 5 blue-white. It is a very expensive creature.
Yeah.
With flying. But the caveat is it costs 1 less for each spirit I control.
Should be easy.
So no, Kykar isn't a spirit, but everything else is.
Yes.
And it also says whenever it or another non-token spirit you control dies or deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 token with flying. Now you're going to say right away, but Millzy, you're making a lot of spirit tokens. And you're right. Millicent is mainly there to get me the token when it attacks or when something else, maybe Dorothea or Clotilda attacks. No, right away it's not as good as Kykar is, but I think it's a really cool support for the deck.
Think of it like this. It's a 4/4 flyer, correct? 4/4?
Yeah.
4/4 flyer for basically 2 mana. Because if you don't have 5 spirits on the board,
I think we're doing well with this deck.
Yeah, I'll be very surprised.
So the reason I don't really care about Millicent's cost is because I've added 2 cards into this deck in my most recent iteration that I think are going to help us not only with these 3 creatures, but with the rest of the creatures in our deck. And the first of those is a spell called Transmogrify. It is a sorcery from M21. It says exile target creature, non-token creature, target creature. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. That player puts that card onto the battlefield and shuffles. Mikey, what do we have a lot of in this deck on the battlefield?
And a lot of 1/1 spirit tokens we're not worried about.
So Transmogrify seems like it would be really easy to sack a 1/1 spirit and go get any of the 8 creatures that I have on this list.
Yeah.
I also added Luca, Coppercoat Outcast. He's a planeswalker from Ikoria. His +1 says exile the top 3 cards of your library. Creature cards exiled this way gain. You may cast this card. Not as good because we don't play a ton of creature cards in our deck. The main reason he's in here is his -2. Exile target creature you control, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. This sounds really familiar. It's Transmogrify, but it's on a planeswalker.
Yep.
So both when I play Luca and when I play Transmogrify, I'm going to get a spirit. And then with Luca, I get 2 shots at the Transmogrify effect, unless he gets attacked or...
Wait, are you telling me a planeswalker is a non-creature spell?
It unfortunately is.
It definitely, unfortunately, is. You would think that it would be one since
So
it's a
the
person.
Transmogrify sub-theme is something that's been added recently. So you're asking yourself, well, I'm playing 3 creatures here that I've described. Who are the other 8? Well, we have everyone's favorite goblin, Dockside Extortionist. It's just too good for what it does, and if I can get it for free off of a Transmogrify effect,
that's pretty
could
great.
potentially do us some good. We're playing one of 2 Theros gods in this deck. Keranos, God of Storms. Mainly what we're using Keranos here is when we draw cards, we have a chance to deal damage to our opponent, which is great.
You want that.
We have Monastery Mentor, the only creature in our deck, one of the 2 creatures in our deck who are making tokens that aren't spirits. He's going to make us, whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we're going to get 1/1 white monk creature tokens with prowess. Now, prowess, for those of you out there who don't know what prowess means, is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control with prowess get +1/+1 until end of turn, which is huge.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We have one of my favorite Theros gods, Perforos, God of the Forge, and when the main reason we're playing him is whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, it deals 2 damage to each opponent.
Man, oh man, I wonder who's going to pump out those creatures and what...
We make into tokens.
Oh yeah, we make into tokens.
So we're going to be pinging this combined with an enchantment like Impact Tremors. Does a lot for our board.
I was going to say, if you, the listener, aren't realizing the combo here, listen, it's good. It's just good.
And the last one, the Locust God.
Oh.
Whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect token with flying and haste. We can pay something on it to draw a card and discard a card. Never bad.
Nope.
And then whenever it dies, put it back in my hand at the beginning of the next end step. So that's just even better. But so there's a little bit of a lot of what this is trying to create a toolbox of value on the battlefield so that every time I cast a non-creature spell, it's just going to keep getting better and better. So you ask yourself, what other things can we do to help our sub-theme? Well, we have Anointed Procession. So every time we make a token, we get twice that many tokens instead. So what's better than one token? Two tokens.
Especially with something like Monastery Mentor, I mean, prowess is really strong. I think it's pretty strong,
and
especially on a token.
This says whenever you would create one or more tokens under your control, that's per effect. So if Kykar and Monastery Mentor's effects both go on the stack to create as a token, they're both getting 2 with Anointed Procession.
Oh yeah.
So this is huge because for 4 mana, we're getting a lot of tokens. Next up, one of my favorite new adds to the deck, because I can't believe it wasn't in there originally, Cathar's Crusade. Cathar's Crusade is 3 and 2 white for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield you control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Mike, you have said multiple times that we have multiple creatures that create tokens. If I have more than one creature that creates tokens on the battlefield and I play a spell, I'm getting at minimum 2 +1/+1 counters on all of my creatures.
Oh,
That's no bueno for the opponents.
On top of that, if you have Impact Triggers out or Perforos out, then you just get to do some damage to them. Like, it is a very wombo combo, big boy goodness that you are showing me right now, and I'm enjoying every second of this.
So the next enchantment we have that cares about casting our spells is Jeskai Ascendancy. I was so glad that I was able to put a Jeskai themed card in this deck. Jeskai Ascendancy is an enchantment for 1 Jeskai, aka blue, red, white. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, and they untap.
Yeah, so basically you're giving prowess to every single creature that you control, and you get to untap them.
And if I cast a spell after combat, they're untapped for my opponent's turn.
Yeah.
Which is huge. And it says and then his second ability says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So we get a free loot, basically, involved. We have a new enchantment new to this build of the deck called Mana Echoes for 2 colorless and 2 red. It says whenever a creature comes into play, you add 1 colorless mana. You may add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool for each creature you control that shares a creature type with it. Mikey, we're making a lot of spirits, right? Which means we could get some colorless mana.
Yeah.
And mana's good, right?
You might need mana.
Mana's good. So Mana Echoes is a card, honestly, I didn't know existed until this time around, and it makes me really happy. So that is all of our stuff that really cares about when we're playing spells, right? Yep. But I talked about how this deck, the whole goal of this deck is to make a toolbox to make our board bigger. So let's go through the kind of stuff that we care about to make our board bigger. We have Favorable Winds. It's a blue enchantment that says all your creatures with flying get +1/+1. Well, most of our spirits have flying.
Yeah.
So this is not only going to make our board bigger.
There's a good little bird that also has flying.
It most certainly does. Now, I do play Skull Clamp, and this is kind of a non-bow with Skull Clamp, but very rarely do I see this in Skull Clamp at the same time. So most of the time it works out really well. Skull Clamp is an artifact that you can pay 1 to equip it to a creature. It gives that creature +1/-1, which is going to kill a 1/1 creature, and you draw 2 cards. So when I get them at the same time, it's bad, but when I can have them separately, it's gorgeous.
Yes.
We play, we already talked about Impact Tremors for when stuff comes in, but we get to play cards like Shared Animosity, which says that when a creature I control attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each creature it shares a creature type with. If I have 7 spirit tokens in the battlefield, they're all attacking.
Ouch.
That's bad.
That's real bad.
We're also playing a newer card, which started its time in Sithis and has kind of moved its way over to this deck. It's called Path of Bravery. For 2 and a white, it's an enchantment. As long as your life total is greater than equal to your starting life total, creatures you control get +1/+1. So as long as I have more life than 40, +1/+1.
Which, if you have Catilda's Backside, which has lifelink,
or even Catilda.
Or even Catilda, yeah, then you can easily get to that.
But this is what enables that. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control attack, I gain life equal to the number of attacking creatures. So it's going to help me gain life for attacking, which, as much as this deck is a toolbox enchantment deck, we still want to attack to win. Yes, we have ways in the deck to win the game without it, but most of the time we're going to be running through for the damage. And my favorite new card for combat is Strixhaven Stadium. I love this card. I'm so excited to use this card. It is a 3 mana artifact that has add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, add a point counter to Strixhaven Stadium. So it's a mana rot for colorless mana. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, you remove a point counter from it. But whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you put a point counter on it, on Strixhaven Stadium. And then if it has 10 or more point counters on it, remove all of them and that player loses the game. So we're hitting with all these 1/1s or 2/2s, whatever they may be when they're on the battlefield. Strixhaven Stadium has a pretty good way for us to take players out in ways they may not expect.
Wow.
Now note, you don't have to take them off to win the game. You can choose to take them off to win the game.
That's pretty good. Actually, I like that a lot. Might have to consider that in a few decks I have. It's not bad.
And then my favorite pet card for mana is Midnight Clock. This card is not as good as probably it is in other decks, but it's a 2 and a blue for an artifact. Tap it to add blue. You can pay 2 and a blue at any time to put an hour count on it. Beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock, and then when it hits to 12, just like a clock, you shuffle your hand and your graveyard into your deck and draw a fresh 7. That's great. And a deck that's kind of always going to be playing spells. Man, isn't it great to reload your hand?
Yeah. Willing is nice. Now, you're playing red and blue. One of them is one of my favorite colors of all of Magic. But you're not playing the normal style of red and blue. Or white, for that matter, which is interesting.
That spell slingy.
Spell slingy, control the board, remove everything, make your opponents hate your guts because you're not allowing them to do anything. Why is that? Is it because you're going more of a toolbox route, because you're trying to set up your board more importantly than trying to worry about your opponent's board?
I think the main reason that I'm going the enchantment route and not the spell slingy route is because I feel like the artifacts and enchantments just have more staying power. That when you build up that advantage over time, if someone has a Return to Dust or they have a enchantment removal spell, you have 9 to choose from, and you have to try to pick the one that's going to help me the most. And there's other wins there. I have tried this deck spell slinging, but I think the thing that the enchantments add the most is kind of protection and long-term value. Not just this turn value, but long-term value. I play enchantments like All That Glitters and Nettle Cyst to start hopefully pumping Kykar up for the number of enchantments and artifacts that I have, and it's just going to make him better, Now, sure, I think you will look on EDHREC and see a lot of spell slingy Kykar decks. I think I just have a lot more love for enchantments and artifacts than most people do, and so that's why I want to play them. The other reason is I've never gotten to play... At the point that I built this deck, I didn't have an outlet for being able to play Heuristic Study and Smothering Tithe in the same deck, or being able to play Search for Azcanta, or a card like Mirror Maid, which just comes in as a copy of any other enchantment on the battlefield. I also really love enchantment creature removal, like Imprisoned in the Moon and Darksteel Mutation. This deck used to have Frogify in it, and that card's really fun too. That's just kind of stuff that you never see in a deck, and I think you get to see it here, and it gets to work to your benefit.
Yeah, especially with the other cards that you have in there, the creature cards that you have in there, it helps out a lot. I see it. Look,
but you notice the spells that I'm playing are in there for a reason.
Yeah.
You notice there's a mix of removal, protection, draw, and
help creature.
And help, right? So I'd say the big spells in the deck, we're playing Enlightened Tutor, we're playing Teferi's Protection, we're playing Transmogrify, of course, we're playing Fierce Guardianship. But for draw spells, we get to play Opt, and it's 1 blue, and it gets us a creature token off of Kykar. We get to play Ponder, it's 1 blue, and it gets us all of my draws as low to the ground as I can get it with stuff like Faithless Looting and Brainstorm, so that I can get more than 1 Kykar trigger in 1 turn, but I'm still accomplishing what I want to do. My favorite new draw spell that's come out is Faithless Mending. It came out in Midnight Hunt. You gain 2, draw 2, and then discard 2, and then you can flash it back for, I think it's 3, whereas it only costs 2 to cast normally. And that's great, because that's hopefully 2 triggers for Kykar that we can get
maybe
over the course of a game, and maybe even 1 a turn. As far as removal, we play Doomscar. Vanquish the Horde's probably better in the slot. I just have a preference towards Doomscar, so I'm going to run it. We have my favorite mass creature removal in Winds of Abandon. It says for 1 and a white, exile target creature you don't control. For each creature exiled this way, its controller gets a basic, but we can overload it for 6 mana and exile every creature we don't control.
Yeah.
This gets around Indestructible, this gets around Hexproof, this gets around Protection, this gets around everything. And it's just going to wipe the whole board away. Yes, we're potentially giving our opponents some basic lands, but I think in most decks, you're not going to have that many basic lands that you can go get.
Not only that, you're playing a board wipe to push yourself into either the win, or you're going to play that board wipe because you really need to get back into this game. And I think you're okay with giving somebody a couple lands.
We play like I said, we mentioned we have our Enlightened Tutor, we have our Mystical Tutor in this deck to go try to find a protection if we need it, or even worst case, a Fierce Guardianship if we really need it.
Yeah.
We have the protection spells. Teferi's Protection, Flawless Maneuver is a free white spell if I control Kykar to give all my creatures indestructible.
Yeah.
We're playing Psych Rift, right? I mean, it's a blue deck. It does so much good stuff. My main techs in this deck, the spells that I love casting, are Crackle with Power. Man, if we can just load into a Crackle with Power and win the game after our combat or before our combat, man, it's great.
Especially since you're sacrificing those spirits to give you red mana.
More mana to put into it, exactly.
Yeah. So I love doing that. I've done that before on a table for an experience talk here for a second. I mean, I think that is a card I've always looked for when you gave me the Kykar deck. I always loved wanting to just put as much mana as I possibly can into it, and then just, all right, I win. Let's move on to the next game now.
And even if Crackle Power doesn't kill your opponents, they're not in good shape.
No.
After it goes off,
No,
if you put enough mana into it. My other favorite spell in this deck, because it just enables the rest of it, is Jessica's Will. Jessica's Will can be huge in this deck because it gives us red mana, but we also have these spirits to give us red mana. So if we can put a Jessica's Will into an Electro Dominance or a Crackle with Power, we can do a lot of work on the board. And then my favorite new card that is probably out of left field for what the deck does, but it's my little middle finger to the rest of the table, is Tasha's Hideous Laughter. It's a spell, it's a sorcery, 1 blue. It says each opponent exiles from the top of their library until that player has exiled cards with total mana value 20 or more. My goal here is I don't want to mill my opponents, even though I'm kind of going back on that by an artifact that I'll mention after this. But the main point of Tasha's is to just throw people off their strategy. If you have someone who's going to be loading up the top of their deck, or they care about big spells, Tasha's can really just exile away something that somebody really needs. And I don't really play many Blaze to flash it back. It's something I'm considering in the future, is playing a Underworld Breach or something like that to use the spells again. I just didn't really love my time with Underworld Breach, so I've kind of let it go.
Tasha's Hideous Laughter is one of those cards I think that is just too good not to put in most blue decks, because of that reason of just throwing your opponent's plan right out the window. Like, I've seen it multiple times where I will exile like 6 or 7 lands that don't have a mana value, so I have to literally just exile them. And then I'll finally maybe get to that 20 mana value of the cards that I have done, you know. If it hits me while I'm playing like Torbrand or Feather, it hurts.
It's going deep.
Because, yeah, those are like, I have 1, 2, and 3 drop spells there. I mean, do the math. If I have 3 spells, that's 7 cards that are going to be exiled. And if I were going to tutor for one of those spells, or if I, like you said, knew that one of those spells were on top, I mean, man, there goes that whole idea. And now I have to figure out, okay, how can I put myself back into this game? It's just it's a pain. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is a giant pain.
So I play Tasha's in this deck as well as my Alayla Esper Enchant, or more artifact heavy deck. And there has not been a single time I've played Tasha's in our play group where I haven't seen one of you mill something off to exile that's really important.
Yeah.
And most of the time, it's at least 2 of you. So that's really great. And I actually took a page out of my Alayla book and put Mind Crank in this deck. Mind Crank is an artifact for 2 mana that says whenever an opponent loses life, I don't even have to deal that life. If they pay life, it happens too. That player puts that many cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. So it mills them for the damage done. Helps me, right? Because when I deal the damage, it's going to mill them down.
Yep.
But if my opponents attack my other opponents, they're getting milled.
Yep.
And if they pay life for anything, they're getting milled, right? Mill is not the goal of this deck at all, but in 2 pieces, I might be able to kind of prod my opponent a little bit.
I think it's an interesting way of control. I think it's just a few little bitty pieces to help you keep your board state advantageous, and it's something that can push you further in the mid to late game, where it pushes your opponent on their back foot because they're thinking, okay, I have these, let's say I have 6 cards in hand, and then I have 5 cards on the board that aren't lands, that I know, okay, this is my strategy, this is what I'm going to go for. I know what other cards are in my deck, I know what cards are in my graveyard, so my plan is to go and draw cards until I pull that Jace that I need. Well, then, okay, you mill that Jace into your graveyard. Can you pull it back? Tasha's hits you. That Jace is now exiled. Can you pull it back?
There are very few exceptions of ways you can pull cards from exile back.
Exactly.
If you didn't put them there through a card.
Yeah, if you didn't put it there. So sad.
And I just want to slightly, before Mikey asks me some more specific questions, I want to finish up one last part of the deck as far as the Tour de la deck in the Planeswalkers. So we already talked about Luca, Coppercoat, Outcast, but I'm playing 4 more Planeswalkers in this deck. One of them has kind of become my favorite blue Planeswalker, and everybody in the playgroup just hates it because I use it too much, probably for my own good. And that's Teferi, Master of Time. You can activate Loyalties of it on everyone's turn. +1, draw and discard. -3, target creature you don't control phases out, and then -10, take 2 extra turns after this one. Rarely ever do I use Teferi to take the turns. I have once or twice, but more often than not, it's to loot and with the +1, and then to get rid of a bigger creature that's attacking me. The other Planeswalker that's been in this deck for the longest time is Narset of the Ancient Way, who came out in Ikoria. +1, you gain 2 life, add blue, white, or red, and use this mana only to cast a non-creature spell. Well, Mikey, that's most of the spells in my deck.
Yep.
-2, draw a card, then you may discard a card. When you discard a non-land card, it deals damage equal to that card's CMC to target creature or Planeswalker. Well, that's huge, because I can draw it, discard maybe a Planeswalker if I don't need it or something else, and do some damage. And then it's -6, which we want to get to as fast as possible if we can. Says you get an emblem whenever you cast a non-creature spell, which remember is most of the spells in my deck. This emblem deals 2 damage to any target, which most of the time is going to be a player.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 Planeswalkers that have been in this deck for the longest time. Like I said, Luca has been a recent addition. Another recent addition, which is probably the Planeswalker I'm the least confident about in this deck. I just want to make it work because of some synergy with some other cards. And that's Nico Eris from Kaldheim. Nico says whenever it enters the battlefield, create X shard tokens. So its cost is X white, blue, blue. And it has 3 loyalty no matter what you pay for the X. But when it comes in, you create X shard tokens. They're enchantment tokens that have pay 2 and sack it to scry 1 and then draw. Well, Mikey, we have multiple cards on my deck that care about how many enchantments that I have.
Yeah.
So this is huge because if I put 4 or 5 mana into it, I'm getting a couple more enchantments that help all the rest of these cards.
Yeah, don't you have a sort of Anthem-like card where it's like when you swing with a creature, it gets +X/+O, where X is the number of creatures you have, or not creatures, but enchantments you have?
I don't think so, off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm misreading something else. My bad.
But here's the big thing. +1 on Nico. Up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn.
Nice.
Whenever that creature deals combat damage this turn, return it to its owner's hand. So if I can get Kykar through for commander damage, it doesn't really matter. But most of the time, I'm going to pick a token. I'm going to swing it. I'm going to sack it before it ever gets returned to my hand. -1, it deals 2 damage to target tap creature for each card you draw on this turn. That's huge.
Yeah, it is.
That could be really big. And then another -1 to create a shard token. So the shards help me draw, but the shards also go into All That Glitters and Nettle Cyst and Hollowed Haunting as more enchantments. So I think it just fits my strategy. I have yet to play with Nico yet. I apologize because they are non-binary. I apologize.
Oh,
they
didn't know that.
Have not come up in any of my games yet, so I'm hoping to see them soon. But the last Planeswalker of the 5 is the Royal Scions. The Royal Scions, or Rowan and Will, This card came out in Throne of Eldraine. This really is in here as a draw outlet for me. So +1, draw, and then discard. Another +1, target creature gets +2/+0 first strike and trample until end of turn. This is a blue-red card giving me trample. Yeah.
That's nutty, dude.
And then -8, draw 4 cards. When you do, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of cards in your hand. But Royal Scion is really there for the card draw, and if I don't need it for the card draw, it's there for that sweet trample, which should not be something that I should have.
But you get that nice flample if you give it to a flyer.
So, Mikey, that's my main kind of tour day deck as far as what I love about this deck. I would love to hear maybe some questions you have for me as far as the deck goes, and maybe I can give the listeners a little more information.
For sure. One thing that came up, you talked about Jessica's Will. Would you still consider... Oh, what did I do? Would you still consider Jessica's Will over something like Mana Geyser?
Yes, and the reason I consider Jessica's Will over Mana Geyser is because if I have my commander out, I get the ability to exile the top 3 and play them this turn.
Nice, okay.
So most of the time, if I'm looking to play Jessica's Will, I'm going to not play my land for turn before I play Jessica's Will, and then that way if I exile a land off the top 3, I can play it.
Nice. Nice.
And hopefully I hit a enchantment or something like that that's not in my hand, and then that way I get good value off of Jessica's Will. Now I know what the argument's going to be, which is Mana Geyser gets you a red mana for every tapped land that your opponents control, and that's a lot. And I agree. My main thing with Jessica's Will is it's just cheaper.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to try to put multiple spirits on the battlefield in one turn, most of the time I have room starting with Jessica's Will, because here's the thing to remember. My spirits sack for red mana, right? Mm-hmm. Jessica's Will and Mana Geyser give you red mana. We want to try to use the little amount of our normal lands as possible so that when we get all this red mana, we have other colors to then use to cast spells.
Right.
So I don't mind as much leaving some of the red mana on the table, because more likely than not, I'm still going to hit something very important off of Jessica's Will, both in the red mana and exiling the top 3.
Yeah. No, I like that one a lot. I like how, the earlier episodes that we've talked about, most of the time we talk about combat for you. And this is a deck that doesn't 100% go, yeah, it's putting creatures down, turning them sideways, and enjoying your life. And I think this is an interesting outlet for you, because we as a play group definitely see you as a player who enjoys to play more creature based.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, I see your enchantment love through Sithis, and I see your artifact love through Alayla, and I love that. I love the difference that you have, but you don't necessarily struggle with it, but I definitely see you play differently. Like, your aggression when you are playing a creature deck is hilarious, because I say hilarious because I'm usually on the receiving end of it. And it's fun to see because of how different it is from this play style with Kykar. And I think it starts with a good hand, and I think you got that down pretty well with this, because I think there's plenty of times where you'll play this, you'll play Alayla, and you will mulligan a few times, maybe, if you can't find what you're looking for. And I think it's because you really, really have to have not the perfect hand, of course.
It's the lands. I mean,
it's the lands.
In all truth,
exactly.
In all truth, this is one of the most hand-dependent decks that I play. But you'll notice, going to your point about the creature decks, you'll notice this is slingy. Mm-hmm. But instead of using the spirits that come off of Kykar in a storm deck where you're just using them to fund mana back into more spells, I've tried to create an actual token deck aggressive. So you'll notice most time when I'm playing this, or when you've played this, it's an arms race, and the opponents don't really want to attack you because you have more than enough creatures to block.
Right.
And it's not that big of a deal, and I'm going to continue to get more and more. That's the one thing I like about it is it kind of stops those big stompy decks, if they don't have trample, from attacking in, because you're not going to get anything through. I'm going to put a spirit in front of it and sack it for red mana, so you don't even get the privilege of your damage, and then we're just going to move on, I've tried my best to add ramp to this deck in a lot of different ways, and I've tried my best to push the card draw forward so that maybe if I get 1 or 2 lands, but I get a draw spell, it's just as good.
Right.
But I think a lot of the things that I've tried to do is focus my artifacts to be mana efficient. We have the Arcane Signet. We have Chromatic Lantern in here, mainly so that hopefully the color of mana doesn't matter as much. Now, Chromatic Lantern can't change the color of red mana that I get from Kykar, but can change every land I have on the battlefield, which is huge. And then the one artifact that I can't believe I didn't have in the deck as far as mana goes, that I just put back in, is Ashnod's Altar. Sack a creature and get 2 colorless.
Yeah.
So now I have the option of doing not only just 1 red, but 2 colorless.
Yeah.
And for a card like Crack with Power,
2 colorless is better than just 1 red.
But also, if I'm trying to cast a Cathar's Crusade or some of these more expensive enchantments, instead of getting the 1 red out of my Spirit, I can get the 2 colorless and hopefully start kind of putting my value, out there in more important ways. I think the big thing that's also changed from this deck from before is, instead of just creating spirits, I'm content with creating other tokens as long as they're beneficial. So we have the monks from Monastery Mentor. We have the insects from Locust God, and I'm also playing Luminarch Ascension. So Luminarch Ascension allows me for, as long as I go 4 turns without taking damage during my opponent's turns, I can pay 1 in a white and get a 4/4 angel, which is still huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge blocker that is going to be tough for people to play. Now, the one enchantment that I took out of this deck that I used to have in was Divine Visitation. And the way that enchantment works is it says whenever you would create 1 or more tokens, you create that many 4/4 angels instead. And it used to be huge, and I'm considering putting it back in, but I think I like the spirit route more than I like the angel route. The angels are cool because they're great blockers, and you can still sack them to Ashnod's Altar for mana. They just don't enable Kykar's spirit sacking for red.
Right.
The thing that I don't like about Divine Visitation is, as soon as Divine Visitation is down, I no longer get spirits. So the thing I like about kind of having Luminarch Ascension be separate is that I can get both angels and spirits. I don't have to choose. I can get both instead of worrying about
just getting the angels and not getting the spirit value.
Yeah. And I think Anointed Procession works so well with all of my token producers because then I'm getting twice of everything.
That's pretty great.
So I'm not just locking myself into spirits. I have others. I've seen a game where I've pressured the game with a Monastery Mentor and a couple monks, and after you play 2 enchantment spells, you now have a ton of 3/3s that are about to swing.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of good here in a lot of ways that I've learned as well. And I think the mana base has changed too. My favorite lands that we've gotten in the last year are Urza's Saga, which is huge. Hull of Heliod's Generosity to go get those enchantments.
Let the record show that a card with the word Urza on it is one of Millzy's favorite.
But, all of the new dual lands we've gotten, the what I'm calling the commander lands, the ones that come in untapped if you have 2 or more opponents, and all the new ones from Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, help this deck so much. You now have 6 more land sources that come in depth for 1 of 2 colors that come in untapped now, and that's huge. The other one-off land that I'm not playing into the lands of the cycle is Hall of Storm Giants, and it's in there just as a way to dump some extra mana for a blocker, because sometimes you have a big thing and you really need the blocker.
Yeah.
And putting 6 mana into it gets you a 7/7 giant that can block.
It's pretty good. Bad. It's pretty good. So, talking about lands, talking about the different cards in general, what would you look at for a good opening hand? Now, before you answer, we do have the actual deck right in front of us. I shuffled it already for you.
Yep. So I have my Kykar test deck here, which is in these beautiful pink sleeves. I know that you, as the listener at home, cannot see them, but I just thought I'd describe to you. Kykar is in these beautiful pink sleeves. He won't be actually in a little bit. I'm in the middle of a little bit of a sleeve carousel, so it's going to be getting some better sleeves. But we thought it'd be fun, instead of just talking about what we want in a perfect hand, let's take a test hand. Would I keep the hand? What do I like? What do I don't like? I'm going to flip the 7 out, and then I'll tell you what I get. So, the test hand I have in front of me, because you at home will not be able to see them. Rugged Prairie, Plains, Catilda Dawnheart Menor, Ashnod's Altar, Sorcerer Class, Nico Eris, and a Luminarch Ascension. So the question, Mikey, I think you have for me is, do I keep the hand? And if I don't, then why, right? This is a hand that I am very convinced to keep.
Yeah.
But in this case, I would probably force it. I am the king of forcing hands, and with this deck, my hope would be that in the next couple draws, I get to draw another land. The only thing that worries me about this hand is the lack of blue mana, and so if I were to mulligan it, that would be the reason why. So much of my deck I have the Sorcerer class that I can't cast without blue. Nico is a double blue pit Planeswalker, so I think if we're having a fun night with the play group, I keep this hand and I force it.
Right.
If we're having a little more of a higher powered game, I would mull this hand.
Right. Having 3 colors and access to those 3 colors in your opening hand is probably what you're always looking for. Since you don't have it here, and if you kept it, what would your first 3 turns look like? Like your turn 1, what would you play, so on and so on.
Let's do it. Let's draw a card.
Yeah.
Let's see what my first draw be. So my first draw is a mountain. That's kind of unfortunate. I mean, I would really love for it to be blue. I'd say turn 1, we drop the plains. And we don't really have a turn 1 play. Nothing in my hand is 1 mana.
Right.
So I don't know, Mikey, let's go 3 turns.
Yeah,
let's just see.
That's what I'm saying. First 3.
Turn 2, we top another plains, which is, that's killer. Here I'm going to drop the Rugged Prairie, and I'm going to tap for Luminarch Ascension. And I'm just going to hope that no one hits me around the table. And my hope here is that maybe I go a couple turns, I can get a couple counters on Luminarch Ascension, and then maybe in the next turn or 2 I can start making some angels to defend myself since I'm waiting for that blue. Okay, so let's go one more draw. My hope here is I catch blue, but if not, we're in a bad luck, and we top a Cyclonic Rift, which is not really great in this scenario. I feel bad because this is kind of like what you wouldn't want to happen with this deck. I'm going to put another plains down.
I think this is good though because, like I said, I shuffled it up. I didn't top deck, anything.
So I think if we're turn 3 to finish it out, I'm just gonna hard cast the Catilda.
Yeah.
And then probably by the time it comes around to my next turn, Luminarch Ascension's probably online. Hopefully. And now I can start making my 4/4s and start defending myself. So I think that's not really what you want as the best hand. But look, turn 3, I have a creature in the battlefield. I have a potential way to make tokens, and I'm gonna survive.
There's survivability. Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. For sure.
So let's...
that was good.
Let's go again. I think it's fun.
Yeah, no, this is good.
Ooh, love this hand a lot more.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Wow.
So this hand, we have Jessica's Will, Darksteel Mutation, a Mountain, Mana Echoes, Rogran Triumph, a Training Center, and Midnight Clock. This hand is an auto keep, and it's an auto keep for these 3 lands and Midnight Clock. I have access to red, blue, and white. I have a Mana Rock, which is great, and especially my favorite Mana Rock in the deck. And the rest of the 3 cards in my hand almost kind of don't matter. I don't think it matters what these other 3 cards are, as long as I have that access to 4 mana, which means at this point, I should have Kykar out on turn 4. I have 3 lands. And I have Midnight Clock, which means on turn 3, hopefully I'm playing that Midnight Clock. And then turn 4, I have that Kykar.
Yeah.
I think turn 1, pretty much no matter what I draw, in this case it's favorable wins, you're putting that Rogran Triumph in tapped.
Yeah.
We want access to those 3 colors of mana. And then turn 2, we draw Mystical Tutor, which is huge. In this case, I'm putting the Training Center down untapped. And I think I'm passing, and I'm going to try to use this Mystical Tutor before my turn to try to load up. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. What would I load up here? Maybe an Expressive Iteration, maybe a.
You have to reveal it, so
maybe a draw spell.
Maybe even a.
Because remember, I have the Jessica's Will. I have multiple enchantments.
Maybe even a Transmogrify.
Yeah, Transmogrify might be huge too. I think if I have to make the gut call right now, I might go for something like an Expressive Iteration because that allows me to see multiple more cards. So then let's just go Same thing. Turn 3, we draw a Strixhaven Stadium, which is huge.
Yeah.
So, we pay 3 for the Midnight Clock. Turn 4, we'd put down Kykar, and then on turn 5, I think I have a chance to play more than one enchantment, and we're just going to start pushing ourselves forward.
Right.
So I hope that just shows you that sometimes our opening hand can be kind of dependent, but when we get the right opening hand, no, I'm not playing Kykar till turn 4, but when Kykar comes down, hopefully we can start just really getting that value,
Yeah, no, I see the survivability there the entire time, even with a hand that doesn't seem like it's your perfect hand, but I think at the end of the day, Commander is so interesting when you have 3 opponents, not just one. And I'm going to probably look at your board. And the only thing that I would have been worried about on that first little hand that we did was Luminarch Ascension.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to try to hit you.
To stop me from getting that counter.
Yeah, to stop you to get that counter. Or try to remove it. That's it. But if that's the only thing you have on the board by turn, what's it, 3 mana spell?
It's Luminarch Ascension is 2 mana.
So by turn 3, if that's the only thing you have is that, and let's say you have like a Soul Ring or something out there, or something, a mana rock of any kind, I probably won't look at you. Well, Midnight Clock I would look at you, but I probably won't look at you. I'll probably be more worried about my other opponents. And finally, by turn 5 or 6, maybe you finally draw that blue, and you're like, hello, Kykar. And
I think the other question is the Luminarch Ascension worth taking off the board on turn 3? Probably not, right? You never know what your opponents are doing, and I think you've learned playing with me for a long time that you want to save your removal for the big things that are going to come, and not the 1 or 2 4/4s I might make in the meantime.
Exactly. The key 2 words here are threat assessment. When you are trying to remove something, you really got to analyze not just what is on the board, but what could be coming up. Because if you're only worried about what's on the board, then you're missing half the game.
Yep.
And I think that's where Kykar kind of shines in this instance. Because with Kykar, you can survive pretty well, even if you don't think you will. Like, I think having 2 draw spells in your hand is nice, because that's 2 non-creature spells that gives you 2 spirits that you can now add more mana, or you can just use them as blockers, and that's fine.
I've noticed this deck tends to be a threat assessment nightmare for a lot of people, because they don't really always understand what's the most important artifact or enchantment that I have, or, to take that a step further, what can I play next that's going to make my board even worse? See, a lot of people will look at a Anointed Procession, or they'll look at a Smothering Tithe or a Rhystic Study, and they'll say that's the problem.
Rhystic Study is a problem.
It's an enabler.
Yes.
But if I have an Anointed Procession out and the next thing I play is an Impact Tremors, now you're in trouble. And the Anointed Procession isn't necessarily the thing that makes you in trouble, right?
Exactly.
So I tend to look at threat assessment. I tend to value what's coming out next more than what's on the battlefield, unless the battlefield thing is a red alert. But I noticed in our playgroup, the reason I like playing Kykar into our playgroup is this is a threat assessment test for them. They don't always understand. And a lot of the times, which I really enjoy, and I think has helped when I've changed this deck, just because you kill Kykar doesn't mean the deck's dead.
I was about to say that, yeah. When we play, I am usually looking to try to bolt the bird, as we've said multiple times.
Yep.
Because you will literally look at me with 4 mana up and go, are you going to just bolt the bird? And I'm like, you can just tap the mana now. And that's literally what will happen. Or, I have to, as a more of a burn player, I have to really understand that, yeah, he is great. Kykar is great. But there's still going to be, like, you had a Catilda out there that still could have done something. Like, still could have been a problem.
And remember how many of my other cards care about when I cast non-creature spells. Yes,
Exactly.
Kykar is the lion's share of them. He is the one I want out there the most.
Yeah.
But I've built this deck so that if Kykar gets killed, which he will first, I need to be able to survive off the rest of it and push for advantage off the rest of it until I can get Kykar back, until he becomes, and when he becomes too expensive.
Yeah.
Kykar's at 8 or 10, he's not getting recasted. Yeah. So then I have to determine what's my plan. And that's why I think cards like Mana Echoes and Shared Animosity help a ton is because they're going to start kind of doing more work than Kykar is. And now you're in trouble because it's not just the creatures. This deck is great into board wipes because I can just rebuild.
Exactly.
You know, unless you're board wiping all my enchantments, I really don't have much fear of a board wipe.
And you can rebuild fast. I've seen that deck rebuild really quickly, which is great. So this is kind of since it does rebuild pretty quickly, I know that you have like a Lightning Tutor in there. That one's a pretty expensive card. Mystical Tutor's a pretty expensive card. Crackle with Power is not cheap. Would you... And Tasha's Hideous Laughter is not cheap either, unfortunately.
No.
Would you swap those out with anything? Like, I think those are more of the higher priced cards, I believe, in the deck. Would you swap those out?
So like the conversation we had in the head-to-head Tovolar episode, I can't take a Lightning Tutor out. You can add an Idyllic Tutor as well if you want. I just don't because I'd rather have a draw spell than Idyllic Tutor, just to be 100% honest, because free mana's a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that the other big money cards are Ristic Study, Smothering Tithe. Allrun's Epiphany has gotten up there.
Yeah.
It's going to get taken out for Time Warp. Now that I have a Time Warp, it does the same thing. I just like Allrun's Epiphany because it gives you tokens. That's another place. But Ristic Study and Smothering Tithe you can take out. They are not necessary for this deck. I think Ominous Seas would be a decent would be a decent replacement for Ristic Study. You put counters on it every time you draw, and you get an 8/8 Kraken when you get to 8. That's huge.
That's huge
in this deck. Smothering Tithe you don't need. It just helps. If you're not going to play the Smothering Tithe, you gotta play a Monologue Tax or Archimemancer's Map of some sort. This deck is going to hurt on mana.
Yeah.
And so we need to at least try to give ourselves some mana. And I think that's where Smothering Tithe shines so much, is its ability to get us treasure. And treasure goes such a long way in this deck. I'm trying to think other expensive cards in the deck. I mean, Mana Echoes is expensive because it has been reprinted in 8 years. So it's not cheap. I mean, the land base itself is expensive. You have all three fetch lands that you can play in this color combination. You have all the shocks. You have, red, blue lands are some of the most expensive lands in Commander.
Yeah.
So they're not cheap. But if there's any one thing that you'll hear from me as you continue to listen to us in our show, if that's what you choose to do, is that your mana base is your most important part of your deck.
Yes.
If your mana base isn't consistent, it doesn't matter what else you put in your deck.
Agreed.
And in my opinion, in Jeskai, you have to worry about your mana base the most because you don't get the free ramp like you do in green. You don't get the free mana acceleration like you do in other colors. Dual lands are the most important thing in our deck because we don't necessarily always are guaranteed to have all three of our colors. Now red and blue are the most, I'd say blue and white are probably the most important, but red's pretty important too. But I've tried my best to make sure that I'm playing dual lands that are going to be important when you get them. I think the filter lands help a ton in this deck to allow us to put one color in and get even the opposite color out if we really need them. I play 8 basics. I haven't found any lands that I like more than those basics, if I'm 100% honest. I've considered the temples to come in and get me the scries.
Yeah.
But I've played the temples in the past. I just don't like them. I've considered playing the lands that deal damage to you and tap for a color.
Oh, yeah.
I've considered those, and they may get there eventually. I may get there eventually. But I really like this mana base where it's at. It's consistent for me. It does a good job.
It feels good, yeah.
It never seems to let you down, which is good. I mean, sometimes the amount of them you get lets you down.
True. And you're running 33?
33. It should probably be 35, but I cared too much about my playables to make it 35.
Right. And of course, you can just take out Dockside Extortions. It's okay.
Oh yeah, no, we can just cut that card right away.
100%.
Who needs that card?
Give me one good memory you have with this deck, like something that you've played, a game that you've played maybe, or a play that has happened with this deck, like just something fun.
Anytime I can crackle with power and take more than one player out is a good time.
Yes.
I know that's a kind of a Magical Christmas Land example, because how often are you actually going to be able to crackle power off with this deck and win? And the answer is more than you think you can.
Exactly.
I love a good Teferi's Protection or Flawless Maneuver play when someone tries to wipe the board and you just go, nope.
Yeah, I remember playing this, and we had 3 games, and all 3 of those games I had Teferi's Protection. And
it's a very good card, especially
it was a very
in this
good
deck.
card. It was hilarious to see that.
The reason it's good is because phasing out doesn't get rid of tokens.
Yep.
And so all your tokens just phase out.
Yep.
It's not like I used to run Cosmic Intervention in here, but the reason I took it out was because you go to exile those tokens and then you lose them.
Yeah.
They don't come back. Whereas with Teferi's Protection, they stay.
Okay. It's okay, yeah.
I know what you're asking yourself, which is, but Flawless Maneuver just gives them indestructible. If your whole creatures get, if you come into an exile board wipe, okay, yeah, but it is what it is at that point.
Yep.
You can only protect yourself so much.
Right.
And I see so many people when it comes to deck building saying, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? We can't play so much protection that we lose our strategy. Exactly. And I have found more times than not with this deck, if your strategy is working the way it's going to, I'll take all the board wipes you can hand to me, because I'm going to rebuild faster than you can.
Exactly. I usually try to get like 2 to 3 protection spells. If I can get that, I'm fine. If I can't, okay, it's whatever. I try not to go more than 3, depending on what I'm trying to do.
I have weekly looks at this deck where I'm like, I should take this card out and add this in. I should take this card out and add this in. But I've stopped as far as the spells go. And the reason is because it's just semantics at that point.
Yeah.
I'm just taking out one protection spell for another protection spell that does the same thing.
Right.
Like, there's nothing that I'm adding or getting rid of that really, 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 really makes a difference. The one card on my maybe board for this deck that I've yet to find a spot for, that I want to find a spot for, is Galvanic Iteration, the one that copies instant and sorceries.
Yeah.
I think it's really important for this deck. I think it would do a lot of good. I just have yet to find the spot that it sits in. So hopefully it's something that I can work in, as well as maybe Underworld Breach again, maybe getting it back in. The other creature that is on the maybe list is Maniform Halkite. It says whenever you cast, I'm pretty sure it says non-creature.
It is non-creature.
So even when I cast an enchantment, I get that dragon token with haste. So it's another creature that I think will make it into this list eventually. It's just not in there at the moment.
Yeah, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX red illusion creature token with flying. Man,
So if Keranos is my least... Keranos and Dorothea are my least 2 favorite creatures that I have on the list right now. If one of them ever were to come out, Maniform Halkite's the first one to go in, and if the other one were to come out, it would probably be to add another spell.
What stinks with Maniform is I remember reading this and I was like super excited for you because it's like, oh, you can put that in Kykar, and then I remembered I reread it again and I was like, oh, it's illusion, not spirit. Man, that'd have been killer if it was a spirit.
True, I agree. But if I'm casting 2 5 CMC spells, that's still 10 damage that turn, right? No, it's not Magical Christmas Land. It's not everything that you could ever want. But I think more often than not, it is a great target for Transmogrify. It's a great target for Luca, right?
Yeah.
Anytime I play a spell, it is probably getting me 1 token that I can act with that turn. And if I have Ashnod's Altar out, I can just sack those illusions for mana.
There you go.
So I think it does a lot of good. So it would probably be something that goes in. I'm testing Keranos right now at the moment. It's the one that I'm testing as far as creature goes. If it comes out, Maniform goes in, probably 100%, since I have a Maniform ready to go for the deck. And then I really want to add another extra turn spell to the deck. I'm just not sure what to cut. That's my other one I've wanted to add a Time Warp. I'm just not sure what to cut. So those are the 2 cards: Galvanic Iteration and another extra turn spell, probably Time Warp, and then Maniform Halkite. Those are the 3 right now on the current date and time, which is December of 2021. Those are the 3 decks that I'm waiting to put in. Now
3 cards to put into the deck.
3 cards I'm hoping to put into the deck. Now this is a deck that will probably get built before a lot of the other decks you're going to hear in this series. So I'm hoping that this is a deck that we'll get to hear more from in the future, and we'll get to see what I've done more in the future. This is a deck that I wanted to do first because I'm really excited to see what Kamigawa can do for this deck. We're going to get some more enchantments, probably. We're going to get some good spells. We're going to hopefully get some spirits. We've already seen one. At the time of recording, we've already seen a dragon spirit.
Yeah, which is good.
And I don't think he's good for this deck, but he's good.
He's good, yeah.
So I hope we get to see more. My hope for Kamigawa will be more enchantments, more good enchantments that... I would love this to go full Enchantress. I don't think it ever will. I think there's too many good red-blue spells for this to never go down that route. But hey, right. You never know.
My last question for you. Will we see this on the table the next time we play?
I hope so. I am...
Oh, it doesn't have to be fully built. I'm fine with it being still in the test.
No, I actually just personally have been recommitting myself to full transparency. I just finished building one more of the decks in my main deck. That we will get a deck tech on eventually. I want to do something with that deck. But I'm looking for the decks I'm going to build next. And this deck is very high up on that list. So I want to play it some more to make sure that it's the list the way I like it. As well as, me, I am the first person to add new cards, proxy new cards from new sets to try.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those decks that will be getting the first of the pass through when it comes to, hey, what can I put in from the set into my decks? This is going to be one of those decks that is going to get that consideration, whereas maybe some other of my decks don't. And I want to add at the end, this is actually a deck that I once had put together. I loved this deck, and it was one of my favorites to play. I actually ripped this deck apart to build, to finish upgrading Goreclaw Omnath Elementals, and those 2 mainly. To upgrade them, I put some of the blue stuff into Omnath, and I was really just able to kind of make them better as decks. So I'm happy to kind of come full circle. And, I was telling you, Mikey, before we started this episode, I love Kykar as a commander because this is a commander that doesn't care about a certain tribe to an extent that I only have one set of cards that I can care about. Like Tovalar cares about werewolves, and we're only going to get werewolves when we go to Innistrad. We may not get spirits all the time, but we're going to keep getting good enchantments. We're going to keep getting good spells. Yeah. And so this deck will change. Maybe Planeswalkers will come out and new Planeswalkers will come in, or new artifacts will come out and new artifacts will come in. And so I love a shell like this for the same reason that I love a shell like a Layla, where these decks will always kind of be changing. I can keep some cards consistent, but I can try new cards out and see if they stick or not.
Yeah.
In the same way that I can't necessarily do that with Goreclaw. Goreclaw is a mono green deck that cares about creatures. If there's not new creatures, nothing gets changed. Whereas this deck, I have so much opportunity to play around with it.
Yep. Well, that's all I have for you. I love this deck. I love playing it. I love seeing it on the board or on the table. I also love trying to beat it as best I can. And I also don't mind losing to it because I know how good it is. I know how much hard work you've put into this deck. And I know how much you like it a lot. So it makes me happy to see you play the deck well.
Yeah. It's a deck I hope to play more. I've spent the last few months really ironing down some of my main decks more. And now I feel like it's time with some of the new sets coming out and us finally starting this head-to-head series where we can try some new commanders.
Yeah.
It's prompted me to start testing and brewing more, and it's allowed me to add some more decks to my test bench to play. Now, to be fully transparent, the reason my test bench is so big is because if you have not listened to our intro episode, please go listen to it. But I play in a play group with more new players than experienced players, which means that as an experienced player, pulling out a strong deck every time is not always a good idea. I want to be playing decks that maybe I have to work for to win, to give the newer players time to get used to their decks and get used to playing the game. I don't want to bring out my top tier deck every time against new players because I don't think that's a good way for them to learn.
Right.
But I love pulling out decks that I've never played before against those players because, yes, I'm a good player and yes, I'll figure it out, but they also then have the chance to try their decks too and get used to their decks. And it's not always going to be then it might be only a 25% chance for me to win, whereas maybe if my deck's just clearly better than theirs, I might have a bigger chance. So, I mean, it's definitely something I feel like you have had the privilege of getting to take advantage of.
Yeah.
You get to have those games where you get to beat me up a little bit more because I'm trying to play into the table. But you've also seen the nights where we're playing with the more experienced players, I can pull out the big guns and have fun.
Yes.
And really enjoy my really strong decks.
Yes.
So I love our play group. If you want to hear more about why I love our play group, you can go listen to our intro episode. We do talk about it a little bit. But
we'll probably continue to talk about our play group, more decks that we can test, more decks that we will build, more decks that we have built, more decks that we probably said, you know what, they suck, we're going to just destroy them. I remember you saying how you would love to talk about some decks that have made the cut, but then got cut.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you want to see my list, it'll be in the link.
Yes.
In the show notes. That is a link to my personal Mox field where you'll see all of my test decks. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole, please go for it. If you're looking at my deck list and you're like, you dummy, why aren't you playing this card? Come into our Discord at me.
Yes.
And say, hey, dummy, why aren't you playing this card? And I'd love to have some conversations about why I'm playing certain cards a little bit more than we can in an hour when we're just trying to, take a flyby of the deck.
Specifically call him a scrubby bubble and tell him to put that card in, you big scrubby bubble.
If you like this episode, this is a series we'd love to try and more of in the future. Please come into the Discord and let us know. We want to know that you want to hear this so that we can make more of it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We are trying our best right now, since our podcast is young, to kind of shotgun new ideas out and see what sticks. So I would love to see what you think of it, and if you want to see more decks. Maybe it's decks of a certain color. Maybe it's decks from our friends in our play group.
Exactly what I was about to go to. This is called the test box, or we're calling this the text box, not just Millzy's test box, not just Mikey's test box, not just Bob's test box. I don't know a Bob, but still.
We could know a Bob.
We could know a Bob. We don't know. But we want to open it up just to the test box because it could be somebody from our play group. Maybe in the future they come onto the show. They actually say, hey, I have this new 5-color lovable jank deck, and we just keep getting beat by it, and we're just like, we gotta talk about it.
Mikey, another idea that I've had that is going to, of course, have to happen down the line, but there are lots of Commander podcasts out there who have people send in lists.
Yeah.
And they critique those lists. This would be a fun series to do that on.
For sure. If you're testing a deck and you're like, hey, I'd love to get somebody's second opinion on it, or even third opinion because there's 2 of us, then yeah, for sure, send it in, send us the link in the Discord. We will more than happily go, sure. We also have a channel in our Discord called Deck Build Help. Deck Building Help with an exclamation point because
I think they all just have that when you say welcome.
Oh, well, that's
It's called Deck Building Help. If you have any questions on any of your decks, whether it's one that you've gotten from us or it's your own deck, I would love to help anybody I can in this chat. If there's any chat that I'm probably going to be in the most, it's going to be this one.
Yeah, you brewer.
I'm a brewer.
I will be too busy calling everybody scrubby bubbles in the general chat.
But come on into the Discord and come enjoy Magic with us, and hopefully you like hearing our words out of our mouths.
Into your ear holes.
Into your ear holes.
Millzy, you got anything else for the listeners at home or on the road?
No, just I'm loving this platform. This is one of the first decks that we've talked about so far that I have a lot of love for. It's one of my personal favorites, and it's cool to be able to share this deck. Whether you copy my list or not, take it, make it your own. It is what it is. I really tried to not make this deck something that's just off EDH Rec. I really have took my time with this deck, like I do with most of my main decks, to play around with cards and to find my own style. And I think this is the most aggro I could make this deck while still having it be combo and having a lot of fun. And at the moment, this is my favorite non-green deck that I play.
That's saying a lot.
Very hard in a world where Winota exists, because I love that deck too. But that deck is radically different from this deck.
It is. That is more combat heavy, where this is just a nice toolbox.
We go get the value.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we thank you so much for stopping by, listening to our words, like we just said, into your ear holes. We hope you enjoyed what we just presented to you guys. A nice set of nice setup to talk about different decks that we personally play, not just ones that we want to brew and give you guys opinions on the matter or give you guys options on the matter. This is stuff that we will actually bring to tables, and we're excited to continue to talk to you guys about it. I'm excited to bring some of my weird random decks that I really, really love to play. We started the episode saying what different decks will be brewing in the future and whatnot. You'll probably be hearing a few of those on here later on down the road, and we are super excited about every episode that we can bring to you, because we hope that it is something that each of you, or not just each of you, but 1, 2, or 3 of you will be like, yeah, that's the episode that I'm gonna show my buddies, and they're gonna understand why I listen to you guys. And we hope that we can give you a good laugh, but more importantly, give you some ideas that will go into your own deck. We say it all the time. We're going to continue to say it. We hope that you take our ideas, put them into your own deck, smash us over the face with it, and then shake our hands and say good game.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you guys so much, and we will catch you next time.